She lost her job for being too big to fit the brand. On live television, her voice cracked as she said she no longer believed in kindness. The cameras caught her breaking, but what happened after they stopped rolling, when Keanu Reeves walked onto that stage, changed her life and millions of others forever. Before we continue this incredible story, let us know where you're watching from. If you enjoy stories like this, subscribe to the channel, because tomorrow we have another inspiring story you won't want to miss. The morning sun washed over downtown Los Angeles, spilling gold over the glass towers and crowded sidewalks. Alicia moved briskly through the lobby of the wellness company where she worked, balancing a paper cup of coffee in one hand and a stack of client folders in the other. She always arrived early. It was her way of proving her worth in a place where she constantly felt unseen. The company sold an image of perfection, slim bodies, bright smiles, and carefully curated positivity. Alicia didn't quite fit that mold. At 27, she had a soft, round frame and an open face that made people comfortable. Her voice carried warmth, the kind that could calm even the most irate clients. But lately, her kindness wasn't enough. She had noticed the way her coworkers looked at her when group photos were taken, how they subtly guided her to the back or cropped her out altogether. She noticed the laughter that stopped when she entered the break room, the sideways glances at the salad she packed from home. Still, she showed up every day with a smile, answering phones and greeting guests with sincerity. Wellness, she used to believe, meant more than appearance. It meant empathy, understanding, and balance. But in that office, the word had been twisted into something shallow. That morning, there was a buzz in the air. The company's CEO, a man named Brandon Steele, had flown in from New York. Brandon was tall, tan, and always dressed in designer suits that screamed success. He was the kind of person who could sell air to an athlete. Alicia had only met him twice, and both times, he had barely looked her in the eye. When the meeting invitation popped into her inbox, mandatory all-staff meeting, 10 a.m., she felt a familiar unease. These meetings were never good news. She tidied the reception area, straightened her blouse, and joined the crowd heading into the glass-walled conference room. The air smelled of coffee and nerves. Brandon stood at the head of the room, smiling with the confidence of a man who had never been told no. "Team," he began, "our brand is evolving. We're moving into a new era, one that reflects health, beauty, and aspiration." He clicked through a sleek PowerPoint filled with images of models jogging, women laughing over green smoothies, and toned arms holding yoga mats. The message was clear. Image was everything. As he spoke, Alicia's stomach tightened. She could feel his words slowly cutting through the fragile layer of confidence she carried. Then, suddenly, he paused. His eyes swept across the room and landed on her. "You know," he said, his tone light but sharp, "we're all part of the brand image here, from our executives to our front desk team." He gestured casually in her direction. "When clients walk in, they should feel inspired. They should see the lifestyle we promote." Alicia froze. The room fell silent. She could feel every pair of eyes turned toward her. Brandon smiled as if he had said something motivational, not cruel. "We all have to ask ourselves if we represent that vision." There it was. The sentence that felt like a knife wrapped in politeness. Alicia's heart pounded in her chest. She wanted to disappear. The fluorescent lights felt too bright, the air too thin. She managed a small nod, pretending she hadn't understood the insult buried in his words. But everyone else did. A few of her coworkers shifted uncomfortably. One of them, a young marketing intern, looked down at her notebook, pretending to take notes. When the meeting ended, Brandon called her aside. His voice was low, measured, but there was no kindness in it. "Alicia, you're a great employee, but we need to make some adjustments to better align with our brand values. This industry is all about presentation." She swallowed hard. Are you saying I don't fit the image? He smiled, the kind of smile that ended any conversation before it began. It's not personal, it's business. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a termination letter. Alicia stood there, the sound of her pulse roaring in her ears. People passed by, whispering, avoiding eye contact. The receptionist, the one who greeted everyone, who remembered birthdays and comforted anxious clients, was suddenly treated like she didn't exist. She gathered her few belongings into a small cardboard box, her framed photo with her mom, a desk plant that leaned toward the light, and a little mug with faded letters that said, "Choose kindness." She held it tightly as she walked out of the office for the last time. Outside, Los Angeles moved on as if nothing had happened. The traffic hummed. The palm trees swayed. The sky was endlessly blue. Alicia stood on the sidewalk, the sun glaring in her eyes, and felt smaller than she ever had before. She walked home that day, not because she couldn't afford a cab, but because she needed to breathe. With every step, memories flashed through her mind. School bullies, cruel comments, every diet she had ever tried to make others more comfortable. She had worked so hard to prove she was enough, and still, it wasn't enough for them. That night, in her small apartment, she sat in front of her laptop. Her hands trembled as she opened a blank post on her social media. For a long time, she stared at the blinking cursor. Then, she typed the words that had been sitting heavy in her chest all day. I guess kindness doesn't matter if you're not thin enough. She hesitated before pressing post. Then she did. Within minutes, the screen lit up with notifications, likes, comments, reactions. Some were kind, some were cruel, but none of them could undo the ache that had settled deep inside her. Alicia closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and sat in silence, feeling the weight of the day pressed down on her like gravity itself. Alicia woke before sunrise, her eyes swollen from crying. The morning light crept through the blinds, cutting lines across the quiet apartment. Her mind replayed every detail of the meeting. The smirk on her boss's face, the whispers that followed, the way no one spoke up for her. Shame settled over her like a heavy coat she couldn't take off. She made coffee, but couldn't drink it. Her phone buzzed constantly with messages. Some strangers offered sympathy. Others mocked her for playing the victim. Each word felt like salt on a wound. She scrolled until the screen blurred, then set the phone down and covered her face. Her mother called that afternoon, her voice soft with worry. "Come home for a while, sweetheart." Alicia almost said yes, but something inside her resisted. She didn't want to run away. She wanted to be seen. By nightfall, she sat on her couch, watching her viral post spread across the internet. News sites were sharing it, influencers were debating it, and millions of people had suddenly formed opinions about her body. She whispered into the quiet, "Maybe this is what invisible feels like, being everywhere, but still unseen." The following morning, Alicia stepped outside for the first time since losing her job. The city air felt heavier than usual, the noise sharper, every billboard and window reminding her of perfection she could never meet. At a cafe near her apartment, she overheard two women scrolling on their phones, whispering about the girl who got fired for being fat. They didn't know she was sitting just a few feet away. She left her coffee untouched and walked aimlessly through the streets. Every reflection, storefront, glass, bus windows seemed to mock her. But somewhere beneath the hurt, a small, stubborn voice whispered, "You're still here." It was faint, but it was hers. That night, she opened her laptop again. This time, she wrote, not out of anger, but clarity. "If they wanted me gone because of my body, then maybe my body will be the reason I'm heard," she typed. She didn't know who would care, but she pressed post again. As she shut the laptop, a strange calm filled her chest. She had no idea that those few words, written in defiance and pain, were about to reach someone who would change everything, someone watching from a distance, who believed in kindness above all. By the third day, Alicia's post had exploded far beyond anything she imagined. Her phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Every few seconds, new notifications appeared, shares, comments, and messages from strangers all over the world. At first, she thought it might fade away in a few hours. But by morning, her face was on the trending page. News outlets had started running headlines like "Woman Fired for Not Fitting Corporate Image Sparks Online Debate." Her name became a topic of conversation she never asked for. Some users praised her courage, calling her brave for speaking up. Others flooded her inbox with cruel jokes and diet advice. "If you want to work in wellness, try living it," one comment said. Alicia read it twice, her stomach twisting, then closed the app. She didn't understand how something so personal could become public property overnight. Reporters began calling her old workplace, asking for statements. Former co-workers texted her in shock. A few apologized for not defending her that day. The CEO released a short statement claiming her termination was unrelated to appearance, but people weren't buying it. The internet had already made up its mind. Alicia stayed inside her apartment, curtains drawn. Her friends encouraged her to take advantage of the attention. Maybe start a blog or appear on local TV. But she didn't want fame. She wanted peace. "They don't see me," she told her mother over the phone. "They see a story." Her mother's voice was calm. "Maybe that story will lead somewhere good, sweetheart. You never know who's watching." That night, she scrolled through the thousands of messages again. Some were angry, others tender. A woman from Texas wrote, "You made me cry tonight. I've been hiding behind oversized clothes for years. Thank you for saying what I couldn't." Alicia read that one 3 times. For the first time since the humiliation, she felt something stir inside her, an ache mixed with hope. Still, she didn't feel ready to face the world. Not yet, but the world was already looking for her. 2 days later, her email pinged with a message titled, "Invitation from the Oprah Winfrey Network." For a moment, she thought it was spam, but when she opened it, the words made her heart stop. The message explained that Oprah's producers had seen her story and were putting together a special episode about self-worth and modern beauty. They wanted Alicia to appear and share her experience. Her first reaction was disbelief. Oprah Winfrey? It felt surreal, like something that happened to other people. She reread the message, then stared at her reflection in the dark screen of her laptop. Her chest tightened with anxiety. What could she possibly say on national television? What if people laughed again? She didn't reply that night. Instead, she turned off her phone and sat in silence, the city lights flickering through her blinds. Somewhere in the distance, sirens wailed. Inside, she whispered to herself, "I'm not ready for the world to see me again." She fell asleep with that thought, unaware that her life was about to take another turn, one that would bring her face to face with 2 people who would change how she saw herself forever. The next morning, Alicia woke to an overflowing inbox. News outlets had begun reaching out directly. Some wanted interviews, others wanted to feature her post in body positivity segments. A few tabloids twisted her story into something shallow, calling her the plus-size girl who couldn't handle criticism. She scrolled through them until her eyes burned, then shut the laptop and whispered, "They still don't get it." Her phone buzzed again. This time the number was unfamiliar, but the area code was Chicago. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello, is this Alicia Bennett?" A woman's voice asked warmly. "My name is Carla. I'm a producer for the Oprah Winfrey Show. Oprah read your story yesterday and was very moved by it. She asked me to call you personally." For a long moment, Alicia couldn't find words. I'm sorry, what?" "Carla, chuckled softly. "It's real, I promise." Oprah would like to invite you to appear on a special episode next week about confidence and modern beauty. We think your voice could help a lot of people. Alicia gripped the phone tighter. "I don't think I'm not anyone important." Carla's voice stayed calm and reassuring. "You don't have to be. That's the point. Oprah believes ordinary voices can start extraordinary conversations. If you're open to it, we'd love to have you." Alicia promised to think about it and hung up. She sat on the edge of her bed for a long time, staring at the carpet. Part of her wanted to say yes. The other part wanted to hide forever. What if the audience mocked her? What if it turned into another round of humiliation? That evening, her mother called again. "You got invited by Oprah Winfrey herself?" "Honey, that's a blessing. I don't want to be a pity story," Alicia said quietly. "I don't want them to look at me and just see, wait." Her mother's tone softened. "Maybe they'll see strength instead. Maybe they'll see your heart." Alicia didn't answer right away. She thought about that word, strength. She had never thought of herself that way. Surviving? Yes. But strong? She wasn't sure. Later that night, another email arrived. This one was short and unsigned, but the subject line made her gasp. It simply read, "A personal note from Oprah." Her hands trembled as she opened it. The message inside was simple and direct. "Dear Alicia, I watched your story today, and I saw more than pain. I saw courage. The world needs voices like yours. You matter, Alicia. Please don't let fear keep you from shining your light. With love, Oprah." Alicia pressed a hand to her chest. No one had ever said those words to her before. "You matter." They echoed in her mind long after she closed the email. She sat awake until nearly dawn, imagining what it would mean to speak her truth on that stage. Maybe, for once, the world would listen to someone who looked like her. By sunrise, she had made her decision. She typed a short reply. "Thank you for seeing me. Yes, I'll do it." Then she hit send, unaware that this single message would set into motion a chain of events that would transform not just her life, but the lives of countless others who had once felt invisible. The following days unfolded in a blur. Producers from Oprah's team coordinated flights, hotel arrangements, and wardrobe fittings. Every time Alicia's phone rang, her heart raced. Each new email from the studio felt like another step into a dream she hadn't dared to have. She was terrified, but also strangely calm, as if some invisible force was gently pushing her forward. In the quiet moments, doubt crept in. She'd stand in front of her mirror, tugging at her clothes, whispering, "What will they see?" She worried about being judged, about her voice trembling under the bright lights. Yet beneath, the fear was something new. A flicker of self-belief. Fragile, but real. Carla, the producer, called one afternoon to prepare her for what to expect. "Oprah's going to guide you through your story. Just speak from the heart. Don't worry about being perfect." The audience responds to honesty. Alicia nodded, even though Carla couldn't see her. "Honesty I can do," she said quietly. When her flight ticket arrived, Alicia sat staring at it for several minutes. Chicago, The Oprah Winfrey Show. Her name printed neatly beside the words guest speaker. She hadn't felt proud in a long time, but holding that ticket made her chest swell with something close to it. Her mom came over the night before she left, carrying a small gift wrapped in tissue paper. Inside was a bracelet with a simple engraving. "Be kind to yourself." Alicia smiled through tears. "You think I can do this?" Her mom placed a hand on her shoulder. "I think you already are." The morning of the flight, Alicia wore a long blue dress and carried a single suitcase. As she passed through the airport, a few people recognized her from the viral post. One woman stopped her at the coffee stand and said, "You made me cry," in a good way. Alicia thanked her softly, surprised by the sincerity in the woman's eyes. For the first time in months, she didn't feel like a headline. She felt human again. On the plane, she looked out the window as Los Angeles disappeared beneath the clouds. She thought about the day she had been fired, about how small she had felt standing on that sidewalk with a box of her belongings. Now, she was flying to tell the world what really mattered. It was overwhelming, almost unreal. When she landed in Chicago, a driver met her at the gate, holding a placard with her name. He greeted her politely and led her to a black sedan that carried her through the cold city streets toward the studio. The skyline glittered in the fading sunlight. Alicia pressed her hand to the scold window and whispered, "Please, don't let me mess this up." That night in her hotel room, she rehearsed answers to questions that might never come. She paced, breathed deeply, and reminded herself of Oprah's message, "You matter." The words had become her anchor. Before she fell asleep, she opened her social media page one last time. Thousands of people were still commenting, still debating, still feeling something because of her. She realized that the post she once wrote, in pain, had become a spark, a reason for others to speak, to heal, to fight shame with empathy. She closed her laptop, turned off the lights, and lay in the dark, her heart steady for the first time in weeks. Tomorrow, she would face the cameras. But more than that, she would face herself. And this time, she wouldn't look away. The morning sky over Chicago was pale gray when Alicia stepped out of the car in front of Harpo Studios. Her heart pounded so loudly she could almost hear it echo in the cold air. The building loomed ahead, its glass doors reflecting the faces of people arriving for the taping. Crew members moved quickly, carrying equipment and checking clipboards. From somewhere inside came the muffled hum of a live audience warming up. A studio assistant greeted her with a warm smile and a firm handshake. "You must be Alicia Bennett. Welcome. We're so glad you're here." Alicia tried to return the smile, but her palms were slick with nerves. The assistant led her through a maze of hallways buzzing with energy. The scent of hairspray, coffee, and stage lights filled the air. Everywhere she looked, people were busy adjusting cameras, testing microphones, rehearsing lines. It felt like stepping into another world, one she had only ever seen from her couch at home. They guided her to a small dressing room marked Guest 4. Inside, a stylist and makeup artist were waiting. "We're just going to make you camera ready," one of them said gently. Alicia nodded, unsure what to do with her hands. She sat as they brushed her hair, applied soft makeup, and helped her choose between two outfits the producers had provided. She chose the simple dark green dress. It made her feel calm, like she could blend in with the room instead of fighting against it. The stylist looked at her reflection and said, "You look beautiful." Alicia smiled faintly. "Thank you, but I just want to look like myself." When they finished, she sat alone for a moment, listening to the faint laughter from the hallway. The reality of what she was about to do settled in. Millions of people would soon be watching her, judging her, maybe even mocking her. For a moment, panic clawed at her chest. She closed her eyes and whispered, "You matter." The words still felt foreign, but repeating them steadied her breathing. A knock came at the door. Carla, the producer, peeked inside. "We're almost ready to start. Oprah would like to meet you before the taping." Alicia's throat went dry. "She wants to meet me now?" Carla smiled. "Just a quick hello." She loves to greet her guests personally. It helps everyone feel comfortable. They walked down a short corridor to a large studio office. The door opened, and there she was, Oprah Winfrey herself. She stood near the window, sunlight catching the soft curls of her hair. Her presence filled the room, not with intimidation, but with warmth. Oprah turned, her face lighting up. "Alicia, I'm so happy you came." Alicia froze, then slowly extended her hand. Oprah ignored it and pulled her into a hug instead. "You've already done something brave," Oprah said softly. You showed up." Alicia felt tears prick her eyes. "I don't know what to say." "Say whatever feels true," Oprah replied. "That's all people need to hear. Just speak your truth." In that instant, the fear inside Alicia loosened its grip. She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll try." Oprah smiled. "You don't have to try. Just be yourself. The world is ready to listen." After her brief meeting with Oprah, Alicia was led to the green room, where the other guests waited. The studio lights from the stage filtered faintly through the glass wall, giving the room a golden glow. A small table offered coffee, fruit, and pastries, but her stomach was too tight to eat. She clutched a bottle of water and tried to steady her trembling hands. Through the doorway, she could hear the muffled rhythm of applause and the booming voice of a stage manager giving cues. Each sound made her pulse quicken. She was moments away from stepping into the same space where people she had admired her whole life had spoken. She tried to remember Oprah's words, "Just speak your truth." As she stood near the mirror, someone entered the room. The air seemed to shift. She turned and froze. It was Keanu Reeves. He was dressed simply in a charcoal jacket, dark jeans, and boots. His presence was quiet, almost humble, but it carried weight. Everyone in the room seemed to pause for a moment, then continued their quiet work as he smiled politely to each person. Alicia hadn't expected to see him in person. She had read that he was appearing on the same episode for a charity segment about a program supporting disabled veterans. Seeing him here, so real, so normal, felt surreal. He noticed her standing awkwardly by the table and offered a small nod. "Hey," he said in that calm, grounded voice the world knew so well. "First time on set?" Alicia blinked, caught off guard by the friendliness in his tone. "Is it that obvious?" she asked with a nervous laugh. He smiled gently. "You're doing fine. It's always weird at first. Just breathe." There was something disarming about him. No trace of ego. No Hollywood distance. His kindness felt effortless, almost quiet enough to miss if you weren't paying attention. For a moment, Alicia forgot where she was. "I'm not really used to cameras," she admitted. "I'm worried I'll say the wrong thing." Keanu shook his head. "There's no wrong thing if it's honest. People remember honesty more than polish." His words, simple as they were, sank into her. He had said them with such sincerity that she believed him. The fear inside her began to soften. A production assistant came in, holding a clipboard. "Mr. Reeves, they're ready for your segment rehearsal." He nodded, then looked back at Alicia. "You'll do great out there," he said before walking toward the hallway. For several seconds, Alicia just stood there, replaying his words. "You'll do great." They weren't dramatic, but somehow they mattered. Someone like him, someone who had seen the best and worst of the public eye, believed she could stand in front of millions and be unmarbled. Enough. She sat down and took a long sip of water, letting the moment ground her. Around her, crew members hurried, checking schedules and microphones, but for the first time that morning, she didn't feel invisible. In a nearby monitor, she saw Keanu testing his microphone on stage. He looked calm, at ease, talking to the sound engineer like an old friend. There was a kind of stillness about him, the same stillness she longed for. Watching him reminded her that humility could be powerful and kindness could be louder than fear. The assistant returned and said, "Alicia, you're up in 15 minutes." Alicia took one last deep breath, smoothed the front of her dress, and whispered to herself, "You matter." Then she stood up and walked toward the hallway, where the next chapter of her story waited just beyond the studio doors. As Alicia stood in the wings, the stage lights glowed through the curtains like a sunrise. The audience's applause faded from the previous segment, replaced by the steady hum of anticipation. A sound technician adjusted the small microphone on her collar. Her pulse thundered in her ears. She glanced at the monitor again. Keanu was finishing his segment, sharing stories about the veterans he'd met and the lessons he'd learned from them. His tone was calm, sincere. Every word carried weight. The audience listened in complete silence. When the host thanked him, Keanu gave a modest nod and left the stage. As he passed her in the hallway, he caught her eye again. "You've got this," he said quietly. The corners of his mouth lifted in a reassuring half-smile before he disappeared behind the curtain. Those 3 words wrapped around her like armor. She clung to them as the stage manager counted down. In 5, 4, 3, the curtain parted and light flooded her vision. Oprah was already on stage, greeting the audience with her signature warmth. Our next guest is someone whose story has captured hearts across the country. She said, "Please welcome Alicia Bennett." Applause swelled as Alicia walked forward, her knees trembling but her chin held high. The audience's faces blurred under the spotlights, but she focused on Oprah's welcoming eyes and the kindness in them. When she sat down, Oprah leaned closer and whispered, "Take your time. Speak your truth." The cameras began to roll. Alicia took a deep breath and started to speak. Her voice wavered at first, then steadied as she recounted the story how she lost her job, how it broke her spirit, how a simple post turned into something she couldn't control. The audience listened intently. Some nodded, others wiped tears. Backstage, Keanu stood watching the monitor. He didn't know this woman personally, but something about her courage moved him deeply. He saw the pain in her eyes, but also the quiet strength rising through it. As Alicia spoke, a calm began to settle over the stage. The fear that had lived in her chest for weeks began to dissolve. For the first time, she didn't feel like a victim telling her story. She felt like a voice being heard. The audience clapped as the familiar theme music faded. Oprah stood at center stage, radiant under the lights, her tone both calm and commanding. "Today," she said, looking into the camera, "we're talking about redefining beauty in a world that tells you to shrink physically and emotionally." The audience murmured in agreement. We're joined by a young woman whose story has sparked an international conversation about kindness, shame, and what it really means to belong. Please welcome Alicia Bennett. Applause filled the room again, softer this time, as Alicia stepped onto the stage. She walked carefully to the chair beside Oprah, her heart pounding so loudly she thought the microphone might pick it up. The lights were bright, almost blinding. She could barely make out the faces beyond the first few rows, only the glimmer of cameras, capturing every movement, every breath. Oprah turned to her with a gentle smile. "Alicia, thank you for being here. I know this isn't easy." Alicia managed a nervous smile. "Thank you for having me." Her voice trembled slightly. Oprah's tone softened. "Millions of people saw your post, and your story has touched hearts around the world. But for those who may not know the details, can you tell us what happened that day?" Alicia took a slow breath. "I worked as a receptionist at a wellness company in Los Angeles. I loved my job, even though I knew I didn't look like most people who work there. One morning, during a meeting, my boss said that I wasn't the image they wanted for their brand. Then he fired me, right there, in front of everyone." A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Oprah's expression shifted from empathy to quiet disbelief. "He said that in front of your coworkers?" Alicia nodded. "Yes." It felt like someone had taken all the air out of the room. I remember thinking I'd done something wrong just by existing the way I do. Oprah glanced toward the audience. "And afterward, I went home and wrote a post about it. I wasn't trying to make a statement. I just needed to get it out." Alicia paused, her throat tightening. "I wrote, 'I guess kindness doesn't matter if you're not thin enough.'" The words hung in the air. The audience went completely silent. Oprah leaned forward, her eyes glistening. "Those words have been quoted everywhere. What were you feeling when you wrote them?" Alicia hesitated, searching for the right words. "Defeated. small, like the world had decided I didn't belong in it. I tried to live by kindness my whole life, but in that moment, I realized kindness wasn't enough to protect me. The crowd shifted uneasily. Some people nodded. Others simply stared, stunned by the rawness in her voice. Backstage, Keanu Reeves watched from behind the rawness curtain. He leaned forward slightly, his brow furrowed. Something in her words hit him deeply. The quiet honesty, the ache of someone who had spent her whole life trying to prove her worth to people who never looked long enough to see it. On stage, Alicia tried to smile, but her lips trembled. When the post went viral, I didn't expect it. I wasn't ready for people to see me. Not like that. Some were kind, but others said I was making excuses, that if I wanted respect, I should change my body, as if my body was the problem. A few audience members lowered their eyes. Oprah placed a hand over her heart. That must have been hard to read. Alicia nodded. It was, but what hurt more was realizing how many people agreed with them. The room was still. Even the camera crew moved slower, as if afraid to break the fragile honesty unfolding before them. Oprah leaned in closer, her voice soft but steady. Alicia, I want to ask something that might feel personal. When you walked out of that building after everything that happened, what was going through your mind? Alicia looked down at her hands. The studio lights shimmered against the tears forming in her eyes. I remember thinking that maybe I deserved it, that maybe I had failed to be the person the world wanted me to be. I walked home holding a box with my things, and every step felt like proof that they were right about me. A hushed silence fell over the room. Oprah nodded gently, encouraging her to continue. But then, Alicia said, her voice trembling, I started to think about all the little things I had done for people. How I listened when they cried. How I covered for coworkers when they were late. How I remembered birthdays. None of that seemed to matter because of how I looked. That's when I realized it wasn't really about me. It was about how people see worth. Someone in the audience murmured softly, Wow. Another wiped away tears. Oprah folded her hands. You just said something very powerful. How people see worth. You've forced us all to think about that. How do we measure someone's value in a world obsessed with appearance? Alicia's gaze lifted. I used to think value came from being liked, from being accepted. Now I think it comes from not giving people permission to define you. It's not easy. Some days, I still believe the lies I see online. But other days, I remember that I'm still here, and that means something. The audience began to applaud quietly, a slow wave of support rising through the room. Alicia blinked back tears. From backstage, Keanu watched, arms folded loosely. His expression was unreadable, but intense. He wasn't just listening to her words, he was absorbing them. He'd seen that same look of defeat in so many faces over the years. Fans, friends, people who believed they weren't enough. He understood that pain, the quiet kind that never fully leaves you. On stage, Oprah shifted gears. When I read your story, she said, I couldn't help but think of all the young people out there who feel like they have to change who they are just to be accepted. What would you say to them right now, if they were watching? Alicia hesitated, then spoke carefully. I'd tell them that they're not broken. I'd tell them that their worth isn't waiting on someone else's approval. You can't let other people shrink your light because they can't handle how bright it is. The audience erupted into applause again, louder this time. Alicia pressed her lips together, holding back tears, overwhelmed by the sound of strangers clapping for her. Oprah smiled proudly. That's exactly why you're here today. You've turned pain into purpose. Alicia managed a small laugh, the first real one of the day. I don't know if it's purpose yet. Maybe it's just survival. Sometimes, Oprah said, that's where purpose begins. The applause built again, echoing across the stage like a heartbeat. Behind the curtain, Keanu leaned forward slightly, one hand on the wall, his expression softening. He could feel something in the room shifting, something quiet, honest, and deeply human. As the applause subsided, Oprah leaned toward Alicia again. "You've shown incredible courage today," she said softly. "But I have to ask, after everything, do you still believe in kindness?" Alicia hesitated. The question hung heavy in the air. She looked down, twisting her fingers together, then raised her eyes toward the crowd. "I want to," she said quietly, "but it's hard. People say cruel things and call it honesty. They don't see how words can break someone who's already hurting." Her voice cracked, and the studio fell still. "Sometimes I feel like people look at me like I'm a failure, not a person." The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. The camera zoomed closer as Alicia's eyes shimmered with tears under the lights. The honesty of that single line pierced through every layer of performance and production. Backstage, Keanu watched from the monitor. He felt something stir deep inside him, an ache of recognition. He knew what it was to be misunderstood, to be judged by things that had nothing to do with your heart. He leaned forward slightly, his jaw tightening, as if every word she spoke reached directly into his chest. On stage, Oprah reached across and took Alicia's hand. "You are not a failure," she said, her voice firm and loving. "You're a mirror. You're showing people what real strength looks like." The audience stood in spontaneous applause. Some were crying, others simply nodded with reverence. Alicia blinked back tears, overwhelmed, but something in her heart felt lighter than it had in years. For the first time, she wasn't apologizing for existing, she was being seen. And backstage, Keanu Reeves, still watching silently, knew this wasn't the end of her in story. It was only the beginning. The applause faded, and for a moment, the studio felt calm again. Oprah smiled at Alicia, giving her space to breathe before asking the next question. "Alicia," she began gently, "you've spoken about what happened to you. But I'm curious, after everything, how do you see the world now? Do you think things are changing?" Alicia hesitated. The lights felt hotter than before, the air heavier. She looked out into the crowd, hundreds of faces staring back at her, waiting for an answer that might make sense of their own pain. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She tried to speak, but her voice broke halfway through the sentence. I don't know if they are." She swallowed hard. End quote. "I want to believe people are good, but..." Her breath hitched. "Every time I think I've healed, someone says something cruel again, and it feels like I'm right back where I started." The words slipped out faster than she could control them. "I don't believe people are kind anymore," she whispered. The audience went still. You could almost hear the hum of the lights above the stage. Oprah leaned forward instinctively, her eyes wide with empathy. "Alicia," she said softly, reaching for her hand. But Alicia shook her head. "It's not just about me," she said through tears. "It's everywhere. People tear each other apart, online, at work, at school, just because they can. I see it every day. I see people pretending to care, but deep down, they just want to judge. I used to think if I was kind enough, if I worked hard enough, people would see me for who I am. But they don't." Her voice cracked again, and she buried her face in her hands. The cameras kept rolling. Some audience members began to cry quietly. Others sat frozen, unsure if they were witnessing something meant for television or something much more human. Oprah moved her chair closer. "Alicia, look at me," she said gently. "You are not alone in feeling that way. Many of us have forgotten how to see each other, how to listen. But that doesn't mean kindness is gone." Alicia lifted her face, tears streaking down her cheeks. "Then where is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Where do you find it when the world keeps telling you that you're not enough?" The audience held its breath. Oprah started to answer, but something in her expression shifted. She glanced toward the side of the stage, where a quiet commotion was beginning to stir. Keanu Reeves, still in his simple gray jacket, was standing beside one of the producers. His eyes were fixed on the stage, on Alicia. He leaned down slightly and whispered something to the producer, who looked startled. "He wants to go out there?" the producer whispered. The sound technician hesitated, looking toward Oprah for direction. From the stage, Oprah noticed the movement. Their eyes met across the distance. She saw the sincerity in his face and nodded, almost imperceptibly. The producer blinked, then gave him a quick signal. Keanu stepped toward the curtain as the cameras continued rolling, the audience unaware that something unscripted was about to happen. Back on stage, Alicia wiped at her face, trying to steady herself. Oprah squeezed her hand. "You don't have to have all the answers right now," she said softly. "You've already done something brave just by speaking the truth." Alicia nodded weakly, unaware that behind her, Keanu Reeves was about to walk onto the stage and change everything. The stage lights flickered slightly as Keanu Reeves stepped out from behind the curtain. At first, the audience didn't realize what was happening. There was no introduction, no cue from the host, just a tall, quiet figure walking with calm certainty toward the center of the stage. The murmurs began softly, then grew into a collective gasp when people recognized him. Alicia looked up, startled. She blinked through her tears, unsure if she was seeing what she thought she was seeing. Keanu gave a small, reassuring nod. "Hey," he said gently, his voice low but carrying easily across the silent room. "Mind if I sit here for a minute?" Oprah looked at Alicia, then at him, and smiled. "Of course." She motioned toward the chair beside Alicia. "Please." Keanu sat down, elbows resting loosely on his knees. For a long moment, he didn't say anything. He simply looked at Alicia, not with pity, but with deep, human understanding. The silence stretched, and it was the kind that didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt like space being made for something important. Finally, he spoke. "You said you don't believe people are kind anymore," he began quietly. "I get that. It's hard to hold on to faith in people when they keep disappointing you. But I think kindness is still there. It's just quieter than cruelty, so it's easier to miss." Alicia stared at him, her eyes glassy. "Quiet doesn't help much when you're hurting," he nodded. "You're right. But sometimes the quiet things are the ones that last. The loud ones fade fast." The audience listened so intently that even the cameras seemed to hum more softly. Keanu continued, his tone gentle, almost meditative. "The world tells us that we have to earn love, that we have to fit into boxes to deserve it. But that's a lie. You don't need to shrink to be worthy of love. You don't need to change who you are for people who can't see your heart." The crowd drew in a collective breath. The words landed with the weight of truth. Alicia's tears started again. But this time, they weren't just from pain. They were from release. The kind that comes when someone finally says what you've needed to hear for a lifetime. Keanu glanced briefly toward the audience. "I've seen a lot of people break because of what others said about them. The world can be cruel, but it can also heal. Sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to look away when someone else is hurting." He turned back to Alicia. "You have that power now. You told your story. You made people feel something again. That's not weakness. That's strength." The audience began to clap softly, moved but cautious, sensing the sacredness of the moment. Oprah, sitting quietly beside them, wiped at her eyes. She understood that something rare was happening, something real. Alicia finally found her voice. "You make it sound so easy." Keanu shook his head. "It's not easy. It's never easy. But you've already done the hardest part. You showed up. You told the truth, even when it hurt. That's courage." Alicia's lips trembled as she whispered, "I didn't expect anyone to care." He smiled faintly. "You'd be surprised who's listening when you speak from your heart." The audience broke into a stronger round of applause now, no longer able to hold it in. Some stood. Others cried. The cameras captured the moment. But for once, it didn't feel like television. It felt like church. As the applause faded, Keanu turned slightly toward the audience. "We live in a world that tells us to judge first and understand later," he said. "But maybe what we need isn't more judgment. Maybe it's more moments like this, when someone chooses honesty over perfection." The audience stayed utterly silent, absorbing every word. Alicia looked at him, tears streaming freely now. "I don't know how to thank you," she said softly. He shook his head. "You don't need to. You already did the brave thing. You spoke when it would have been easier to stay quiet. That's what changes people." Oprah reached over and took both of their hands, her voice warm and steady. "What we just witnessed isn't about television. It's about truth. It's about how one person's pain can wake something up in all of us." She turned to the crowd. "Kindness isn't gone. It's sitting right here in front of us." Applause again. But this time, it wasn't for celebrity or spectacle. It was for connection, for humanity. Alicia leaned forward, overcome by emotion, and whispered to Keanu, "You didn't have to do that." He smiled gently. "Yeah, I did." For a moment, the three of them sat in silence under the lights. Alicia still trembling, Oprah's hand on hers, and Keanu quietly watching her with calm understanding. The camera zoomed out, capturing the image that would later circle the globe. A woman finding her voice, a host offering compassion, and a man reminding the world that empathy still mattered. Backstage, crew members wiped their eyes. Even the director hesitated before cutting to commercial, unwilling to interrupt something so genuine. That moment, the moment Alicia believed she was seen, became the one that would change her life forever. For a few seconds after the commercial break, the studio felt different. The atmosphere was heavy but alive, as if everyone sensed they had witnessed something they would never forget. The stage lights glowed softly on Alicia's tear-streaked face. Oprah sat beside her, still holding her hand, while the audience remained unusually quiet, some still wiping their eyes. Then, Keanu Reeves rose from his chair, off stage. He wasn't following a cue, and no one asked him to. He simply stood and began walking toward the set again. The camera operators exchanged confused glances, but didn't move. Everyone could tell something important was happening. When he appeared under the lights, the audience gasped. Oprah turned slightly, recognizing the quiet determination in his expression. Keanu didn't stride out with confidence. He walked slowly, deliberately, his eyes fixed on Alicia. Every step he took seemed to cut through the tension in the room. He stopped beside her chair. Alicia looked up in shock. Her lips parted, but no words came. For a brief moment, it was as if the entire world had gone silent. Keanu lowered himself to one knee beside her. The crowd murmured softly, but he ignored them. His voice was calm and low when he finally spoke. "You don't need to shrink to be worthy of love." Alicia froze, the words sinking deep. Her breath caught in her throat. The studio audience went completely still. Even Oprah's eyes widened. Keanu held her gaze, steady and kind. "You don't have to fit into anyone's idea of what you should look like to deserve respect. You were enough before that job. You're enough right now." Her tears came again, but this time, they weren't the same. They weren't born from humiliation or despair. They were tears of something else. "Release," Keanu continued quietly, his voice carrying through the silent studio. "When people hurt us, they want to make us believe that something's wrong with us. But that's their fear, not our truth. You don't need to prove anything to them. You just need to live your life the way you know how, with kindness." Alicia shook, her head slowly, still in disbelief. "I don't have to know you to care." The world needs more people who stop walking past others when they're in pain. Alicia covered her face, overcome by the moment. The audience erupted into a mixture of tears and applause, many rising to their feet. But Keanu didn't turn to the cameras or acknowledge the cheers. He stayed kneeling, one hand resting lightly on the edge of her chair. Behind them, Oprah stood quietly, her hand pressed to her heart. Her voice, when she spoke, was unsteady. "That," she said, gesturing toward them, "is the message we all need to hear." The audience broke into applause again, louder this time, fuller, almost reverent. The studio no longer felt like a talk show. It felt like a sanctuary. Keanu looked up at Alicia again, his expression calm and compassionate. "Don't let them take your light," he said softly. "You have no idea how much it means to people who are still searching for theirs." Alicia nodded, tears spilling freely. "Thank you," she whispered. He gave a small nod back, then stood up slowly as the applause continued to swell. As the applause slowly faded, Keanu looked around the studio at the faces still shining under the lights, at the camera crew trying to hold back emotion, at the strangers who had come expecting a talk show, but instead found themselves witnessing something sacred. The energy in the room felt fragile, like glass. Oprah took a step closer, her voice low and steady. "You know, Keanu," she said, "I've had thousands of guests on this stage. But what you just said, you don't need to shrink to be worthy of love. That might be one of the truest things ever spoken here." He nodded humbly. "I think we all forget it sometimes." Alicia wiped her eyes, still trembling. She looked at him as if trying to understand why someone like him, someone with fame, success, and all the validation she thought she needed, would care enough to speak to her like that. "You really believe that? That kindness can survive in people like me?" Keanu's eyes softened. "Especially in people like you," he said. "You know what it's like to be hurt and still choose to be gentle. That's the kind of strength that can change the world." The audience broke into quiet murmurs of agreement. Several people in the front row nodded through tears. Alicia tried to laugh, but couldn't. Her voice shook. "I've been told all my life that I had to lose weight to be happy, that I had to look a certain way to be worth anything. I believed them. I believed them so deeply that I started disappearing a little more each day." Keanu crouched down again beside her chair. "You don't have to disappear anymore," he said softly. "You deserve to take up space in this world. Every inch of it." Oprah placed a hand gently on Alicia's shoulder. "You see, Alicia," she said, "this is what real healing looks like. It's not about pretending to be okay. It's about being seen and knowing that you are enough, even in the middle of your pain." Alicia nodded slowly, tears still falling. "I don't even know what to say." Keanu gave her a faint smile. "You don't have to say anything. Just keep being who you are. Someone out there needs to see you exactly like this, unfiltered, brave, and human." The studio grew quiet again. Every camera focused on Alicia's face, on the moment she began to breathe differently, deeper, as if some invisible weight had lifted. A man in the audience stood up suddenly. "My daughter's watching this," he said, voice trembling. "She's 12. She cries every day because she doesn't look like the other girls at school. I just want to thank you for saying what every parent wishes their kid could hear." The audience turned toward him, clapping gently. Alicia pressed her hand to her chest, overwhelmed. "Tell her she's perfect," she said through tears. "Tell her I said she's enough." Keanu smiled, glancing toward the man. "And tell her there are people out here rooting for her, people she'll never even meet." Oprah blinked back tears. "That right there," she said, "is how we build kindness back into the world, one honest conversation at a time." The audience rose again in applause, not roaring this time, but steady, heartfelt, the kind that carried warmth instead of noise. Alicia turned to Keanu. "You don't realize what you just did. she said softly. "You didn't fix me. You reminded me I didn't need fixing." He met her gaze. "That's all any of us need to remember." As the final applause quieted, Oprah stepped forward, her voice trembling slightly. "We planned a show about beauty and confidence," she said, glancing around the room. "But what we got was something far greater. We got truth." The audience nodded, many still emotional. Keanu turned back to Alicia and spoke softly enough that only the microphones could catch it. "You've been through a storm, but storms don't last forever. Sometimes they clear the air so you can see yourself again." Alicia let out a shaky breath, her voice breaking. "No one's ever talked to me like this. You didn't treat me like a story. You treated me like a person." He smiled gently. "Because that's what you are, a person who matters. Don't ever forget that." For a moment, the stage lights softened, and time seemed to slow. Oprah placed a hand on Alicia's back and said to the audience, "Kindness can change a moment, but compassion can change a life." What happened here today reminds us of that. The crowd rose once more in a standing ovation, not for a celebrity or a performance, but for the fragile, powerful humanity shared in front of them. Alicia stood as well, uncertain, her hands trembling. Keanu turned to her and extended his arm. She took it. Together, they faced the audience, both of them visibly moved. Cameras flashed, but neither looked away. They stood, united, in quiet strength. As the lights dimmed and the show cut to break, Oprah leaned close and whispered, "This moment will reach the world." She was right. Before the day was over, that moment, the image of a woman finding her worth and a man reminding her of it would travel farther than anyone in that room could imagine. When the show finally ended, the bright lights faded, and the roar of applause became a soft echo behind the stage. The audience filtered out, still whispering about what they had just seen. The studio crew moved quickly, cleaning, resetting, and preparing for the next day's taping, but the energy was still different. Charged, reverent, almost hushed. Alicia sat alone in the green room, shoulders slumped, her mind still spinning from what had happened. The adrenaline had drained from her body, leaving behind an aching quiet. The makeup team had offered to help her freshen up, but she'd politely refused. She didn't want to hide the tears or the smudged eyeliner. For once, she felt okay being seen exactly as she was. Her reflection in the mirror looked unfamiliar. The same face stared back at her round cheeks, tired eyes, but something had changed behind them. She had come to Chicago expecting to tell a sad story. Instead, she had found something like healing. Yet even now, she couldn't quite grasp what to do with it. A soft knock came at the door. She turned as it opened slightly, revealing Keanu Reeves holding 2 steaming mugs of tea. He smiled. "Thought you could use this." Alicia blinked in surprise. "You didn't have to." He stepped in, closing the door gently behind him. "I know," he said, setting the mugs on the small table. "That's why I did." She gave a shaky laugh and sat up straighter. "You must be used to people crying around you by now." He shrugged lightly, sitting across from her. "Not really. It's not something you ever get used to. Pain's different for everyone." For a moment, neither spoke. The air felt calm, the way it does after a storm. Then Keanu leaned back slightly, his voice soft but firm. "You were brave out there. You told the truth. And that takes more strength than most people realize." Alicia looked down at her hands. It didn't feel brave. It felt like falling apart in front of the world. He nodded. Sometimes falling apart is what finally puts the right pieces back together. She met his eyes, searching for any trace of pity. There was none, only quiet understanding. "You said something out there," she murmured. "That I don't have to shrink to be worthy of love. It's been echoing in my head ever since." He smiled faintly. "It's true. We spend so much time trying to be smaller, quieter, easier for other people to accept. But the people who really care about us don't need us to shrink. They need us to breathe. Alicia exhaled, realizing she'd been holding her breath for most of the day.
It's just hard to believe I deserve that kind of love. I get that, said.
Most people in the spotlight don't either. I've seen them actors, musicians, people everyone calls beautiful, and half of them can't even look in the mirror without finding something wrong. The truth is, none of us ever feel perfect. But empathy doesn't come from perfection. It comes from the cracks. The green room fell silent again. Alicia looked at him, really looked, and saw that he wasn't offering rehearsed wisdom or celebrity kindness. He was speaking from somewhere honest, somewhere that had known pain too. "Thank you," she said softly. "For everything." He smiled. "You don't have to thank me. Just promise me one thing. Don't let today be the end of your story." Alicia held the warm cup of tea between her palms, staring at the rising steam. The quiet hum of distant equipment filled the air, but inside the green room, everything felt still. "Don't let today be the end of my story," she repeated. "It's strange to hear that when, for so long, I didn't think I had one." Keanu leaned forward slightly, elbows resting on his knees. "You always had one. It just took a moment like this for the world to listen." She smiled faintly, shaking her head. "The world only listened because you walked out there. If you hadn't said what you did," he interrupted gently. "If I hadn't said it, someone else would have eventually. You were already speaking truth. I just joined the moment." Alicia looked down, embarrassed but touched. "I still can't believe you actually did that. You didn't even care that the cameras were rolling." Keanu chuckled softly. "The cameras didn't matter. I've seen too many moments in life that should have been stopped for compassion but weren't. This time, I didn't want to stay still." That silence between them, gentle, human, real, seemed to stretch in a way that wasn't uncomfortable. Alicia realized that kindness didn't always have to be loud or dramatic. Sometimes it was just someone sitting with you long enough for your heart to catch up. After a moment, Keanu spoke again, quieter now. "You know, when I was younger, I thought if I worked hard enough, I could control how people saw me. But no matter what I did, there were always people ready to tear it down. At some point, I stopped trying to be understood by everyone and started trying to understand others instead. That's when life began to feel lighter." Alicia listened intently, her eyes wide. "How do you do that? How do you not care what people think?" He smiled sadly. "I still care. Everyone does. But I try not to let their voices drown out my own." She thought about that for a long moment. "I've spent years drowning in other people's opinions. Maybe it's time I started listening to myself." Keanu nodded. "That's where healing starts. You don't wait for the world to be kind before you begin. You start with yourself." The door creaked open then, and Oprah stepped inside. She looked serene but deeply emotional, as if the moment on stage had reached something in her too. "I thought I'd find you both here," she said softly. "I just wanted to say thank you for what you did today. I've been doing this show for decades, and I've never seen anything like it." Alicia stood up quickly, wiping at her eyes. "I should be the one thanking you, Miss Winfrey. You gave me a chance when you didn't have to." Oprah smiled, shaking her head. "No, Alicia. You gave us all a reminder of what authenticity looks like." Keanu looked at her with a knowing smile. "It's rare these days." Oprah nodded. "That's why it matters. People will remember this." She glanced at Alicia. "And they'll remember you." Alicia felt tears forming again, but this time they were softer, lighter. "I hope they don't just remember me crying." Oprah's eyes glowed with warmth. "No, they'll remember your courage and your truth." Oprah moved closer and sat beside Alicia on the couch. "You know, she said gently. When I started my career, people told me I didn't have the look for television. They said I was too emotional, too soft, too different. But what I learned is that the things that make us different are the things that make us powerful. Alicia listened, her heart thudding softly. So, what do I do now? Oprah glanced between her and Keanu, a thoughtful smile forming. You do what you were born to do. You turn your pain into something that helps others heal. Keanu nodded. There are millions of people who feel like you, unseen, unheard. If your story reaches even one of them, it'll matter. Alicia looked at them both, overwhelmed. I don't even know where to start. Oprah smiled knowingly. We'll help you. Let's make something real. A platform, a voice for people who feel invisible. For a moment, the three of them sat in silence, the weight of that promise filling the air. Alicia nodded slowly, emotion tightening her throat. A place where no one has to apologize for existing. Keanu raised his cup of tea slightly, a quiet toast. To empathy, not perfection. Oprah did the same. And to being enough. Alicia lifted her cup last, her voice trembling but strong. To being seen. They clinked their cups together, the sound small but powerful. A symbol of something that would outlive that day. Outside the green room, the world continued moving, unaware that a simple conversation was about to spark a movement, a promise between three people to remind the world that love doesn't need to be earned. It only needs to be remembered. 3 days after returning to Los Angeles, Alicia woke to a string of unread messages. Her phone had been buzzing all morning, but she hadn't dared check it. When she finally did, her breath caught in her throat. Headlines filled her screen clips of the show had gone viral across every platform. Millions of people were sharing the moment when Keanu knelt beside her. When Oprah said, "That's the message we all need to hear," the comment sections were flooded with gratitude, with people saying they'd cried watching it. She scrolled slowly, hardly believing any of it. Alicia Bennett becomes the face of self-worth, one article read. Another said, a new voice of compassion emerges on daytime television. It didn't feel real. She wasn't famous. She was still the same woman who took the bus to save money, who hid behind big sweaters when she didn't want to be noticed. Her phone rang again, and this time the name on the screen made her freeze. Oprah Winfrey. She answered, her heart racing. Miss Winfrey? Oprah's warm voice filled the line. Alicia, please, just Oprah. How are you holding up? I'm not sure, Alicia admitted, laughing nervously. It feels like the world exploded overnight. Oprah chuckled softly. That's what happens when truth meets the right moment. I've been thinking about you, and I have an idea. Alicia leaned against the counter, gripping the phone tighter. An idea? Yes, Oprah said. The response to your story has been incredible. People are writing in from all over the world. They want to hear more from you about how to heal, how to love themselves again. I want to help you build a platform where you can speak to them directly. Alicia blinked, stunned. You mean like a show? Something more personal, Oprah replied. A YouTube channel. Your own voice, your own space. You'll talk about kindness, body image, empathy, all the things that make people feel seen. My team will help you set it up and sponsor it. You'll have full creative control. Alicia pressed a hand to her mouth. I don't even know what to say. Oprah, I've never done anything like that before. I know, Oprah said gently, but that's why people will listen. You're not an expert. You're someone who's lived it. You're real. That's what makes your voice powerful. Alicia felt her throat tighten. What if I mess it up? What if I say the wrong thing? Oprah laughed kindly. Then you'll learn and keep going. The people who need to hear you don't want perfection. They want honesty, and that's something you already have. A long silence followed as Alicia tried to process the magnitude of what Oprah was saying. Then Softly, she said, "You really believe I can do this?" "I don't just believe it," Oprah said. "I know it. The world doesn't need another celebrity. It needs someone who reminds us what it means to be human." Alicia closed her eyes. She could almost feel the weight of that statement settling on her shoulders, not as a burden, but as purpose. Later that week, Oprah's production team contacted Alicia to finalize details. They arranged a small meeting at a cozy studio space in Santa Monica. When Alicia arrived, she expected a boardroom full of executives and intimidating contracts, but instead, she found a small, sunlit room with soft music playing and a whiteboard covered in ideas. Oprah was already there, wearing a simple sweater and a smile that instantly made the room feel lighter. Keanu was there too. He sat at the table with a notebook in front of him, quietly sipping coffee. When Alicia walked in, he stood and gave her a small, genuine smile. "Hey," he said softly, "good to see you again." "Good to see you too," she said, still amazed that this was real. Oprah motioned for her to sit. "We were just talking about your channel," she said. "We want to make sure it feels true to you. No scripts, no pretense, just your story, your heart." Alicia hesitated. "I don't know if people want to hear my heart every week. I'm not famous." Keanu leaned forward. "That's exactly why they'll listen. You're not trying to sell anything. You're trying to connect." Oprah nodded. "He's right. You're not here to perform. You're here to start conversations that make people feel seen." The producer handed Alicia a simple layout. It was titled, "You Are Enough." Beneath it were notes for Noder. In Restart, that is Noder, beneath it were notes for Dest. He was best Mar. That is Noder, beneath it was Node potential topics. Self-worth, social media pressure, kindness, healing after shame. Alicia read the list and felt a lump form in her throat. "This is bigger than me," she whispered. "It always is," Oprah said. "That's what makes it meaningful." They spent the afternoon brainstorming ideas for the first episode. Keanu offered to help film it, saying he could donate a camera setup from his foundation. "It's just gathering dust anyway," he said with a half smile. "Might as well help someone who'll use it to do some good." Alicia laughed softly, shaking her head. "You're really going to help me record?" He nodded. "Absolutely. And if you want, I can appear in the first video. Just to let people know, this message matters to more than one person." Her eyes welled again. "I don't even know how to thank you both." Oprah placed a hand over hers. "You'll thank us by paying it forward. Every story you tell, every person you remind that they matter, that's your thank you." The room fell quiet again, but it wasn't awkward. It was the kind of silence that held meaning. Alicia looked at them both, her voice barely above a whisper. "Then let's do it. Let's make something that reminds people they're enough." Keanu smiled. "That's the spirit." Oprah rose, lifting her teacup slightly. "To new beginnings." Alicia lifted hers too, to being seen. The three of them stood in that quiet studio, united not by fame, but by purpose, ready to turn one act of compassion into a movement that would ripple far beyond the walls of that room. Alicia stared at the camera on her small dining table, its red light blinking softly. Her apartment was quiet except for the distant hum of traffic outside. The walls were bare, except for one thing, a simple handwritten sign taped behind her chair that read, "You Are Enough." The words looked uneven, written in black marker on a scrap of cardboard. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. That was the point. Keanu had helped her set up the equipment earlier that morning, arranging the tripod and lights so the shot felt warm and natural. "You don't need anything fancy," he'd said before leaving. "Just speak the truth. That's what people remember." Now she sat alone, hands trembling slightly. The tiny lens staring back at her felt like the eyes of the world. She took a deep breath, pressed record, and began. "Hi," she said softly. My name's Alicia. Some of you might know me from the interview with Oprah a few weeks ago. I wasn't sure I'd ever talk about that day again, but I've realized something. Since then, sometimes what hurts the most is what teaches us the most. Her voice wavered, but she kept going. I spent years thinking that if I could just lose weight or look different, people would finally accept me. But I've learned that trying to earn love from others while denying yourself never works. I want this channel to be a space where we stop pretending, where we talk about self-worth, shame, kindness, everything people are afraid to say out loud. She paused, her hands gripping the edge of the table. If you've ever been told you're not enough, I want you to know something. You don't need to change to deserve love. You don't need to shrink to fit into anyone's idea of beauty. You are enough, exactly as you are. She stopped the recording, exhaling slowly. Her heart raced, but a small smile tugged at her lips. She played the clip back, and though her voice cracked in places and the lighting wasn't perfect, it felt true. That was all she wanted. Later that afternoon, Keanu returned to help with the final edit. He watched quietly, nodding as her message played. "It's beautiful," he said simply. "I was scared," Alicia admitted. "I almost didn't post it." He smiled. "That's how you know it's real." Before they uploaded it, Keanu recorded a short clip to include at the end. The camera framed him against a neutral wall. He looked straight into the lens and said, "We all carry scars, some visible, some not. But kindness starts when we stop judging and start listening. The moment we see each other without labels, that's when healing begins." When Alicia watched the final cut, she felt tears rising again. It wasn't just a video anymore, it was a message to anyone who had ever felt invisible. Together, they pressed upload. The upload bar moved slowly across the screen, as if testing her patience. Alicia sat beside Keanu, nervously twisting her hands. Together. "I can't believe this is actually happening," she whispered. Keanu leaned back in his chair. "It's happening," he said simply. "And you've already done the hard part. You spoke." When the upload finally finished, the title, "You Are Enough," Episode 1 appeared on the screen. Keanu helped her schedule it to go live that evening. Then he packed up his things, handed her a small memory card, and smiled. "Keep recording. Don't stop now." That night, Alicia could barely sleep. Every few minutes, she refreshed the page, waiting for the first comment, the first sign that anyone had even seen it. For the first hour, there was nothing. Then, just after midnight, the number changed views. 23, then 89, then 300. By morning, the counter read 10,482. Alicia sat in bed, stunned. Her phone buzzed nonstop as new comments appeared. She scrolled slowly through them, heart pounding. One said, "I've never heard anyone say it like that. Thank you." Another, "I cried watching this. You put words to something I've felt my whole life." A mother wrote, "My daughter and I watched this together. She asked if she could put a sign on her mirror that says, 'I am enough.'" The words blurred through Alicia's tears. It didn't feel like fame. It felt like connection. Something deep and real. Something that had nothing to do with numbers. By noon, the video had crossed 50,000 views. She called Oprah first. "People are actually watching," Alicia stammered. "They're writing to me from everywhere." Oprah's voice came warm and proud. "Of course they are. You spoke to their hearts, not their screens. Keep doing that, and you'll help more people than you can count." Later, Keanu called to check in. "I saw the view count," he said with a quiet laugh. "I think we might have started something. I keep reading these messages," Alicia said softly. "People saying they don't hate themselves as much today. I can't believe something so small could matter so much." Keanu's tone softened. "It's not small, Alicia. It's a spark. People are starving for honesty, and you gave them a little piece of it. That afternoon, she recorded a thank you video. Her hair was pulled back, and her eyes still looked tired from crying, but she smiled anyway. "I don't have fancy lights or a script," she said, "but I just want to thank everyone who's watched and shared. I started this because I wanted to believe kindness still exists, and after reading your messages, I do." The response to that video was even faster than the first. Her subscriber count climbed into the thousands. The hashtag #YouAreEnough began trending. People across the world posted their own handwritten signs, mirroring the one behind Alicia's chair. When Keanu saw the trend online, he smiled quietly to himself. He didn't call her right away. He knew she didn't need his reassurance anymore. She had found her voice, and now the world was finally listening. The glow of the screen reflected in her eyes. But it wasn't the light that made her shine. It was something inside her. Something that had been waiting all along. She whispered to herself, "Maybe I was never too much. Maybe the world just needed more of me." And for the first time in years, she believed it. Over the next several weeks, Alicia's life transformed in ways she never imagined. Her small apartment, once a quiet place of self-doubt, had become a kind of studio. The "You Are Enough" sign still hung on the wall behind her, now framed by a string of soft lights she bought with the first bit of income from her growing channel. Every few days, she uploaded new videos, some about body image, others about kindness or forgiveness. Her words weren't polished, but they were honest, and that's what people connected to. Her subscriber count jumped from 10,000 to 50,000, then 100,000 within a month. Emails poured in faster than she could read them. Some were from young women who had struggled with eating disorders. Others were from men who said her words helped them open up to their children. One message came from a teacher in Ireland who wrote, "We watch your videos in our classroom every Monday. You've made my students believe that empathy is strength." Alicia often stayed up late reading those messages, her heart swelling with disbelief and gratitude. Each story felt like a mirror, reflecting her own journey. Different lives, same ache for acceptance. One morning, her phone rang again. It was Oprah's team, inviting her to appear on a series of podcasts for OWN Digital about real talk and real healing. They wanted her to speak about self-worth and mental health. Alicia hesitated at first, unsure if she was ready to share her story beyond her camera. But then, she remembered Keanu's words, "Don't let today be the end of your story." So she said yes. Her first podcast was raw and emotional. The host asked, "When did you start believing you were enough?" Alicia paused for a long moment before answering. "I think I'm still learning to," she said. "Some days I forget, but when I see how many people are healing together, I realize we're all learning to believe it, one day at a time." The episode went viral within days. She was invited to local talk shows, where she spoke about her movement, with a calm confidence that surprised even her. Each appearance brought more messages, more stories, more hope. Still, when the cameras turned off and the lights dimmed, Alicia sometimes felt that old shadow of doubt creeping in. She'd stare at her reflection before bed and whisper, "Why me?" It wasn't imposter syndrome in the usual sense. It was the quiet disbelief of someone who had spent too long being told she didn't deserve to be seen. One night, she sat at her desk reading comments when she came across one that hit her harder than the rest. It read, "I wish I had your strength. I don't think I can ever get there." Alicia stared at it for a long time, feeling a pang of sadness. She whispered, "Neither could I, until someone believed in me." Then she thought of Keanu and Oprah, and how their faith had given her the courage to start. Maybe it was her turn to pass that belief on. As the weeks continued, Alicia's name began appearing in places she had never imagined. Oprah's network featured her story in a mini-documentary called The Courage to Be Enough, and clips of her interviews began circulating across social media. She was invited to speak at small conferences and women's empowerment panels, where she told audiences that confidence wasn't about looking perfect, it was about letting yourself be real. Her voice had changed too. The first videos had carried tremors of uncertainty, but now, her tone carried quiet conviction. She spoke with purpose, her once fragile words now steady. Yet beneath all the progress, there were nights when she still felt the old ache whispering from the corners of her mind. Sometimes she'd wake up in the middle of the night, overwhelmed by the attention, the comments, the pressure to stay strong. What if they're wrong about me? She'd whisper to the darkness. What if I can't live up to what they think I am? It was during one of those late nights that her phone lit up with a message from Keanu. It was simple, just 3 words. Still enough, always. She smiled through her tears, realizing he somehow knew exactly when to remind her. The next morning, she wrote a new script for a video titled, "When You Doubt Yourself." Sitting in front of her camera, she began speaking softly. "People keep telling me I've changed their lives," she said. "But the truth is, they've changed mine. Every time someone shares their story, I remember I'm not alone. I still have bad days. I still struggle to believe I'm enough. But maybe that's what keeps me human." When she finished filming, she uploaded it without editing. It became one of her most viewed videos yet. Thousands of comments poured in, many saying they felt comforted by her honesty. Oprah called her later that week to congratulate her on reaching 500,000 subscribers. "See what happens when you speak from the heart?" she said warmly. "You've turned your pain into a bridge." Alicia laughed softly. "Some days, I still feel like I'm walking across that bridge barefoot." Oprah's voice softened. "That's what makes it real. Don't ever lose that honesty. It's your gift." By the end of the month, Alicia's small apartment was filled with letters. Handwritten notes from around the world covered her coffee table and walls. A woman from Brazil wrote, "I stopped hiding my arms because of you." A man from Ohio said, "I apologize to my daughter for calling her lazy. I see her differently now." Every message reminded Alicia that something beautiful was happening, not just in her life, but in the lives of others who were learning, through her, to love themselves again. Yet even as her world expanded, she never stopped whispering those words each night before bed, the same ones that started everything. "You are enough." And every time she said them, they felt a little truer. It began on a quiet Tuesday morning. Alicia had just finished filming a new video titled, "Learning to Like Your Reflection." The tone was calm, reflective, full of the same warmth that had built her community. When she uploaded it, she made tea, sat by the window, and smiled at the sunlight pouring into her small apartment. She didn't know that by nightfall, that peace would vanish. The first sign came through a message from one of her followers. It read, "Don't look at the news sites today." She frowned and opened her laptop anyway. Her name was trending again, but this time for all the wrong reasons. A popular gossip website had published an article with the headline, "From Fired Receptionist to Fat Influencer Alicia Bennett's Lucky Break." The piece mocked her success, implying that her rise was nothing more than pity disguised as empowerment. It questioned her credibility, mocked her appearance, and suggested that real motivation requires real fitness. Within hours, the article spread across social media. Screenshots, memes, and cruel jokes filled her notifications. Some people defended her, but the noise of the mockery drowned them out. Alicia tried not to look, but it was impossible. Her phone kept buzzing. Every vibration, another reminder that strangers were dissecting her body and her story. She scrolled through comment sections that twisted her words, accusing her of promoting unhealthy lifestyles and profiting off victimhood. At first, she felt angry, then numb. By evening, the anger gave way to exhaustion. The same camera that had once felt like a window of hope now looked like a weapon pointed at her. She closed her laptop and sat in silence. All the progress, all the messages of love, suddenly felt fragile. She wondered if she'd been fooling herself. Maybe they were right. Maybe she was just lucky. The tears came quietly, at first in small bursts, then uncontrollably. She pressed her palms against her face and whispered, "I can't do this again. Not again." The thought of quitting crept in. It would be so easy. Just delete the channel, disappear, go back to being invisible. No more headlines, no more scrutiny, just peace. But then, her phone rang. When she saw the name on the screen, she hesitated. Keanu Reeves. She wiped her face quickly and answered. "Hey," she said softly, her voice trembling. He didn't waste time with small talk. "I saw what's happening online," he said. "Are you okay?" Alicia let out a shaky laugh. Define okay. There was a pause. Then his voice came, calm and certain. "You don't fight darkness by turning off your light, Alicia." She went silent, those words cutting straight through the fog in her mind. "You've helped too many people to stop now," he continued. "You don't owe the world perfection. You owe it honesty. Don't let them take that from you." Tears filled her eyes again. But they felt different this time, not from defeat, but from being seen. "I don't know if I'm strong enough," he paused before answering. "Then borrow strength from the people you've already helped. That's what they're there for." After their call ended, Alicia sat in silence for a long time. Keanu's words echoed in her mind. "You don't fight darkness by turning off your light." She repeated them out loud, testing how they sounded in her own voice. Somehow, saying them made her chest feel a little lighter. Instead of shutting down her channel, she opened her laptop again. The hateful comments were still there, but she scrolled past them this time. Beneath the noise were hundreds of supportive messages she hadn't noticed before, people saying she'd changed their lives, that her story gave them courage. She realized that while cruelty shouted, kindness whispered, and you had to lean in to hear it. She grabbed her notebook and began to write. Not a script, just thoughts, raw, unfiltered words. When she finished, she wiped her face, turned on the camera, and hit record. There was no makeup, no lighting setup, just her in a hoodie, her eyes swollen from crying. "Hi everyone," she began, her voice fragile but steady. "I wasn't sure I'd post anything tonight. I thought about quitting. The truth is, the last few days have been hard. People have said things that hurt more than I want to admit. But I realize something. If I give up now, then all those voices win." She paused, taking a shaky breath. "I never started this channel to be perfect. I started it because I wanted people like me to feel seen. I'm not here to tell you how to look or what to change. I'm just here to remind you and myself that kindness starts when we stop judging and start listening." Her eyes welled again, but she didn't stop. "I'm not trying to be an influencer. I'm just trying to be kind to myself and to others. And if that's not enough for some people, that's okay, because it's enough for me." When she finished, she didn't even watch it back. She just clicked upload and closed her laptop. Then she sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest, and whispered to the dark room, "That's it. That's my truth." By morning, her phone was flooded again, but this time, it wasn't hate. It was love. Thousands of comments poured in from people thanking her for speaking openly. Celebrities, teachers, teenagers, and even parents shared the video across platforms. It was raw, it was unpolished, and it was real, and that made it her most watched video yet. Oprah called later that day, her voice full of pride. "You turned pain into power again, Alicia. That's what true leadership looks like." Alicia smiled through her tears. "I didn't feel powerful. I just felt tired." "That's usually when the real healing begins," Oprah said. That evening, Keanu texted just one line. "The light wins again." Alicia looked around her. Small apartment, the same one she had cried in so many times before. and smiled. The sign on the wall still read, "You are enough." For the first time, she truly believed it, because she had proved it to herself. Months passed, and the storm of negativity faded into distant noise. Alicia's channel continued to grow, but more importantly, so did her confidence. She spoke at schools, community centers, and small conferences about self-worth and kindness. What once felt impossible, standing before strangers and speaking her truth, now felt like purpose. Then one afternoon, as she wrapped up filming a new video, her phone buzzed with a message from Oprah's producer. "Oprah would like you to come back to the show," it read. "We're planning a special reunion episode called Healing in Progress. She wants you to be part of it." Alicia stared at the screen, her throat tightening. It had been nearly a year since she'd first sat under those studio lights and cried in front of millions. The thought of returning made her nervous, but also proud. This time, she wasn't going as the woman who broke down. She was going as the woman who rebuilt herself. On the day of the taping, the Chicago skyline gleamed outside the studio windows. Alicia stood backstage, dressed simply in a navy blue dress and a silver necklace her mother had given her. Her heart raced, but her posture was straight, her chin high. She could hear the familiar rhythm of Oprah's voice through the curtain. "Today," Oprah told the audience, "we're revisiting one of the most emotional moments we've ever shared on this stage. A moment about courage, compassion, and the power of kindness. Please welcome back, Alicia Bennett." As the curtain parted and Alicia stepped into the light, the audience rose to their feet. The applause wasn't just loud, it was warm, almost reverent. She smiled, her eyes glistening, and waved as she took her seat. Oprah greeted her with open arms. "Welcome back, Alicia," she said warmly. "Thank you," Alicia replied, her voice steady but full of emotion. "It feels different this time." Oprah nodded. "I imagine it does. The last time you were here, you shared your pain. Today, you're here to share your healing." The audience grew quiet as Oprah leaned forward. "Tell us, what has this past year taught you?" Alicia took a deep breath, glancing briefly toward the side of the stage. Keanu was there, watching silently from behind a camera, giving her a small nod. It grounded her instantly. "This year taught me that healing isn't about forgetting," she began. "It's about learning to be gentle with yourself while you grow. I thought I needed validation, that if enough people accepted me, I'd finally accept myself. But that's not how it works. Validation fades. Kindness lasts." The crowd listened intently. Alicia continued. "The real turning point wasn't when people started following me online. It was when I stopped apologizing for being me. I realized I didn't need to prove my worth through likes, followers, or headlines. My worth existed long before anyone noticed." A few people in the audience wiped their eyes. Oprah smiled proudly. "That's powerful, Alicia. So many people need to hear that." Alicia nodded softly. "I used to think self-love meant perfection. Now I think it means forgiveness, letting yourself be human." Oprah leaned in, her eyes kind but curious. "If you could speak to the woman you were a year ago, the one who walked onto this stage trembling, what would you tell her?" Alicia smiled softly. "I'd tell her she was never broken. She just needed to stop listening to the wrong voices. I'd tell her that kindness isn't weakness. It's strength disguised as softness." The audience broke into quiet applause. Alicia's voice grew steadier as she continued. "When I was fired, I thought it was the end of everything. When people mocked me online, I thought it was proof that I didn't belong. But each time, kindness found me again. Through Oprah's invitation, through Keanu's words, through every person who wrote me to say they felt seen, that kindness rebuilt me." Oprah's voice caught slightly as she said, "That's why this episode is called Healing in Progress. Because healing doesn't mean you've arrived. It means you've chosen to keep walking." Alicia nodded, her hands folded gently in her lap. Exactly. I still have days when I doubt myself, but now I know that doubt doesn't erase progress. You can be healing and still be strong. The audience applauded again. Standing, this time, Alicia blinked back tears, overwhelmed by the sea of faces cheering for her, not out of sympathy, but respect. When the applause quieted, Oprah turned toward the side of the stage. "There's someone else who wanted to be here for this moment," she said with a knowing smile. The curtain parted slightly, and Keanu stepped onto the stage. The audience erupted into applause again, this time with pure excitement. He smiled modestly and took the seat beside Alicia. "I told her I'd be watching," Keanu said gently, "and I wanted to make sure she knew I meant it." Alicia laughed softly, her eyes glistening. "You kept your promise." He nodded. "You kept yours too. You didn't stop shining." Oprah smiled at both of them, visibly moved. When that first episode aired, I remember thinking, this isn't just television. It's transformation. What you two shared that day reminded the world that empathy still matters. Keanu turned toward Alicia. "You showed people that strength doesn't have to roar. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it looks like getting back up when no one's watching." The audience was silent again, hanging on every word. Alicia took a deep breath, letting her gaze travel across the room. "If anyone watching this feels unseen," she said softly, "please know that your worth isn't something you have to earn. You're enough, even on the days you can't feel it. And sometimes, believing that is the bravest thing you'll ever do." The audience rose to their feet once more, clapping through tears. Oprah stood too, joining in the applause. Keanu looked at Alicia with quiet pride, his eyes saying what words didn't need to. As the lights dimmed and the music swelled, Alicia stood on that stage taller, stronger, radiant in her calm. She no longer needed to be rescued. She had rescued herself. And from the side of the stage, Keanu smiled, knowing she had finally found her voice. A full year passed before Alicia realized how much her life had changed. Her channel had surpassed 1 million subscribers, but more importantly, her world had filled with genuine joy. Her apartment no longer felt like a hiding place, it had become a sanctuary. Soft green plants lined the windowsills, photos of smiling fans and letters of gratitude covered her corkboard, and sunlight spilled through the curtains every morning, touching everything with warmth. On an ordinary Sunday afternoon, Alicia sat at her kitchen table, sipping coffee. Something about the quietness made her reflective. It had been exactly 1 year since her first viral video, the one that had changed everything. She thought about that scared woman she used to be, sitting in the same chair, wondering if anyone would ever listen. Now, thousands did. But as she looked around her home, she realized there was one thing she hadn't done yet: say thank you. That thought sat with her all day until, by evening, she set up her old camera again. It was the same one Keanu had given her, the same table, the same angle, but the difference was in her eyes. They no longer carried the weight of someone searching for her worth. They carried the peace of someone who had found it. She hit record. "Hi everyone," she began softly, her smile gentle. "It's been a year since this journey began. A year since I posted a shaky video with a cardboard sign behind me that said, 'You are enough.' I didn't know if anyone would watch. I just needed to believe it myself." She paused, her throat tightening. "And now, somehow, we've built a community that believes it too." Her voice quivered slightly, but she didn't hide it. "There's something I've wanted to say for a long time. I owe a lot of this to 2 people who saw me before I saw myself. Oprah Winfrey, who gave me a platform, and Keanu Reeves, who gave me courage." Tear rolled down her cheek as she smiled through it. "Keanu didn't try to change me. He didn't tell me to fix myself or lose weight or become someone else. He just said, "You don't need to shrink to be worthy of love." And that sentence changed everything. She took a deep breath, eyes glistening. He made me believe I was good enough, not someday, not if I got better, but right then, as I was. And I think that's the message I want to leave with everyone watching. You don't have to wait until you're perfect to be worthy of kindness. Alicia looked into the lens, her expression tender but strong. You are not a project. You are a person. And you are enough. She let the camera roll for a few seconds of silence, then smiled again, whispering, "Thank you for believing with me." Then she reached forward and stopped the recording, feeling both full and free. Alicia uploaded the video late that night without any expectation. It was quiet outside, the city, lights flickering in the distance, and for the first time, she didn't stay up refreshing the screen. She simply turned off her phone, whispered a prayer of gratitude, and went to sleep. By morning, the world had responded. The video had exploded across social media. Within hours, it reached over 10 million views. The clip of her tearfully saying, "Keanu didn't try to change me. He made me believe I was good enough," spread everywhere. News outlets replayed it. Fans created compilations of her words set to gentle music. Comment sections overflowed with stories of people who had watched her journey from that first trembling interview to the confident woman now sitting before them. One message read, "I played your video for my daughter. She looked at me and said, 'Mom, she talks like me. Thank you for helping her see her worth.' Another said, 'You don't know me, but you saved me tonight.'" Alicia sat at her table reading for hours, unable to stop the tears from Tan's falling. These weren't just comments. They were echoes of the same pain she had once carried, now turning into light through her words. That afternoon, her phone rang again. Oprah's voice came through, soft and full of pride. "Alicia, have you seen what's happening? I can't stop crying," Alicia admitted. "It's like the whole world showed up to hug me." Oprah laughed warmly. "That's because you've been hugging the world for a year. It's only fair it hugs you back." She hesitated, then added, "I want to do something with this. I've spoken to my team, and we'd like to create a short documentary about your story. We'll call it The Power of Enough. It's not just your journey, it's everyone's." Alicia went silent for a moment, her hand over her heart. "You really think people will want to see that?" "I know they will," Oprah said firmly. "Because what you've done isn't about fame, it's about healing, and that never goes out of style." Alicia smiled, tears still glimmering in her eyes. "Then let's do it." When the documentary premiered a month later, it opened with footage from her first day on Oprah's stage. The trembling voice, the tears, the raw vulnerability. Then it transitioned to her sitting at her desk a year later, surrounded by light, repeating those same words. "You are enough." The world watched again. Millions were moved once more, not by a celebrity story, but by the transformation of an ordinary woman who found extraordinary courage. Keanu attended the premiere quietly, sitting near the back of the theater. He didn't stay for interviews or spotlights. But when Alicia took the stage to thank everyone, their eyes met across the crowd. She smiled at him, mouthing the words, "Thank you." He smiled back and simply nodded, knowing she didn't need saving anymore. As the credits rolled, the audience sat in silence, reflecting. For once, no one clapped right away. They just breathed, letting the truth sink in. Because deep down, everyone watching understood the message wasn't just Alicia's. It belonged to all of them. The months that followed the release of The Power of Enough were unlike anything Alicia had ever imagined. She was no longer just an online figure or a guest on talk shows. She had become a movement. Invitations began pouring in from schools, community centers, and mental health organizations across the country. Each wanted her to speak about body image, kindness, and the power of self-worth. At first, Alicia hesitated. The idea of standing before live audiences still made her nervous. But each time she considered saying no, she thought about the messages she received daily, young people writing to her about how her words helped them through depression, self-hate, or bullying. She knew she couldn't stay behind the camera anymore. Her first event was in Seattle, inside a modest high school gym filled with folding chairs and handmade banners that read, "Be kind to yourself." She wore jeans, a soft gray sweater, and her silver "You Are Enough" necklace. As she stood behind the microphone, she looked out at hundreds of teenagers watching her, their faces curious and expectant. She smiled, nervously. "A year ago," she began, "I was sitting alone in my apartment, convinced my life was over. I thought kindness didn't exist anymore. But then, two people changed that for me. Oprah Winfrey gave me a platform. And Keanu Reeves reminded me that you don't have to shrink to be worthy of love." A hush fell over the gym. "You don't need to look a certain way, or have a certain body, or be perfect to deserve kindness," she said. "You just need to start offering that kindness to yourself first, because the way you talk to yourself becomes the way you live your life." As she spoke, the crowd grew more emotional. Some students nodded quietly, others wiped their eyes. One teacher in the back clapped softly, and soon the whole room followed. When the applause ended, students lined up to hug her, take pictures, or simply say thank you. One girl in particular caught her eye. She was small, maybe 15, with dark hair pulled into a messy bun and a nervous smile. Around her wrist, Alicia noticed a bracelet engraved with the words, "You Are Enough." When it was her turn to speak, the girl's voice trembled. "I started watching your videos last year," she said. "I used to hate myself so much that I couldn't even look in the mirror. But then you said, 'You're not a project, you're a person,' and it stuck with me. Now, every morning, I put this bracelet on and remind myself of that." Alicia's throat tightened. She reached out and took the girl's hand. "You helped yourself," she whispered. "You just let my words walk with you for a while." The girl's eyes glistened. "You helped me stop hating myself," she said softly. Alicia couldn't hold back the tears anymore. She pulled the girl into a hug, the audience falling silent around them. In that moment, all the years of pain, rejection, and humiliation melted into something new: purpose. After that day in Seattle, everything changed for Alicia. The moment with that young girl stayed with her, replaying in her mind during quiet moments. She realized it wasn't about her story anymore. It was about how her story gave others permission to tell their own. What had once been an act of survival had become a mission of healing. She began traveling more often, visiting schools, shelters, and wellness conferences across the country. Each place felt different, but the emotions were always the same: hope mixed with vulnerability. She met men who told her they finally forgave themselves after years of shame. She met mothers who said they stopped speaking harshly about their bodies because they wanted their daughters to grow up differently. In one college auditorium in Denver, a student stood up during the Q&A and asked, "Do you ever wish you could go back and erase the hard parts of your life?" Alicia thought about it for a long moment before answering. "No," she said, "because those are the parts that taught me empathy. If I hadn't been broken, I wouldn't understand what it means to help someone else heal." That simple answer spread online later that night, viewed millions of times. The clip was shared with the caption, "She turned her scars into light." Through it all, Keanu stayed in quiet contact. He never sought credit or attention, but occasionally, Alicia would receive a message from him before a big event. Remember, one text said, "You already have everything you need to make an impact." Another simply read, "Your light is working." Every time she read his messages, she smiled. His faith in her had never wavered, even when hers did. Months later, she received an invitation to speak at an international youth summit in New York. The event was televised globally, and Alicia was the keynote speaker. Standing on that massive stage, looking out at thousands of young people waving small cards that read, "You Are Enough," She felt a calm settle over her. When she began speaking, her voice carried not with fear, but with quiet strength. "We spend so much time trying to fix what was never broken," she said. "But what if we stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be kind? What if healing isn't about becoming someone new, but remembering who you were before the world made you forget?" The crowd erupted in applause, the sound rolling through the auditorium like a wave. Cameras flashed, capturing the moment. A woman once mocked for her pain, now standing as a symbol of grace and courage. When it ended, Alicia stepped off stage and sat alone for a moment, tears filling her eyes. Her pain had traveled far, but so had her healing. Somewhere in the audience, she knew someone had just heard the words they needed to keep going. And as she took a deep breath, she whispered to herself the phrase that had carried her through it all: "You are enough." The following spring, the world gathered to celebrate something beautiful that had grown from one moment of compassion. The grand ballroom of the Beverly Hilton shimmered with light, filled with artists, activists, and leaders from around the world. The event was called the Global Kindness Awards, an evening dedicated to honoring those who had made a difference in mental health and human connection. At the center of it all was Alicia Bennett. Her foundation, The Power of Enough, had gone from a small community initiative to an international nonprofit supporting workshops in schools and programs for self-esteem and emotional education. That night, she was being recognized with the Humanitarian Impact Award. But the night held something else, something the media hadn't anticipated. Keanu Reeves and Oprah Winfrey were both attending, not as celebrities, but as friends coming together again to celebrate what their kindness had set in motion. As guests arrived, flashes from photographers filled the carpet, but Keanu avoided the limelight, dressed in a simple black suit. Oprah arrived soon after, graceful as ever, her smile radiant. When they met in the lobby, she greeted him warmly. "Keanu," she said with genuine affection, "it's been too long." He returned her smile. "It's good to see you, Oprah. I think we both knew this day would come." They shared a quiet laugh as cameras captured the reunion from a distance. There was no fanfare, no scripted words, just two people proud of what had grown from a moment of truth on a talk show stage years earlier. When the ceremony began, the room dimmed, and soft music filled the air. Clips from Alicia's journey appeared on large screens, the trembling young woman in the original interview, Keanu kneeling beside her, her first viral video, and the movement that followed. Gasps and applause echoed through the crowd as her story unfolded once more, this time as part of history. The host stepped forward. "Tonight's honoree has reminded the world that healing begins with kindness, and kindness begins with courage. Please welcome Alicia Bennett." Alicia walked onto the stage in a flowing emerald dress, her hair pulled back, her smile glowing. The audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. She paused, overcome by emotion, and pressed a hand to her heart. "Thank you," she said softly, once the applause settled. "A few years ago, I stood in front of cameras feeling broken, afraid, and small. I didn't know that moment would change my life, or that it would lead me here." Her voice wavered slightly, but she steadied herself. "What I've learned since then is that kindness doesn't just heal individuals, it multiplies. Every person who chooses compassion adds to the chain. And tonight, we're celebrating everyone who kept that chain alive." The audience listened, silent and moved. She turned her gaze toward the front row, where Oprah and Keanu sat together. Her eyes filled with tears as she said, "This foundation exists because two people refused to look away when someone else was hurting." Oprah smiled, tears glistening. Keanu lowered his head modestly, his expression calm and grateful. Alicia took a deep breath before continuing. "Oprah, you gave me a stage when I didn't even believe I deserved a voice. And Keanu, you reminded me that kindness isn't loud, it's steady. You taught me that sometimes the simplest words can change the course of a life." She paused, her voice trembling with emotion. You both showed me what empathy looks like in action. And now, I get to pass that forward every day through this foundation. That's not my success, it's ours." The crowd erupted in applause again. Oprah wiped at her eyes, smiling proudly, while Keanu gave Alicia a small nod that carried the weight of everything unspoken between them. As the music swelled, the host invited Oprah and Keanu to join Alicia on stage. Oprah rose, first, embracing Alicia with both arms. "You did it," she whispered. "You took pain and turned it into purpose." Keanu approached next, offering Alicia his hand. "You didn't need saving," he said quietly. "You just needed someone to remind you of what was already there." She smiled through her tears. "You did that." Oprah took the microphone then, addressing the crowd. "Kindness," she said, her voice rich and resonant, "is contagious. And today, we celebrate the people who started it. This story began with compassion, but it didn't end there. It became a movement that proves goodness can still lead the way." The audience responded with a thunderous standing ovation, the sound filling the ballroom like a wave. Cameras flashed as Oprah turned toward Keanu, motioning for him to say a few words. He shook his head lightly at first, hesitant as always, but then he stepped forward. "We didn't do anything special," he said humbly. "We just listened." His words landed with the quiet power that had defined him all along. The room fell completely silent for a moment, as if everyone was holding their breath. Then the applause came again, softer this time, more emotional. Alicia stood between them, wiping her eyes. The lights above glowed golden, reflecting off the tears on her cheeks. For the first time, she didn't cry out of pain or disbelief. She cried out of joy, out of gratitude, out of knowing that something good had come from something once unbearable. When the ceremony ended, people lined up to meet her, to tell her how her foundation had touched their lives. But in the corner of the ballroom, Oprah and Keanu stood together quietly, watching her greet the world she had inspired. "She's found her footing," Oprah said softly. Keanu nodded. "She was always standing. The world just needed to see it." Oprah smiled at him, her eyes warm. "You've always had a way of showing people who they really are." He gave a damning, small shrug. "Maybe, but tonight, she showed us who we could all be." The music rose again as Alicia turned, catching their gaze from across the room. They exchanged a look filled with gratitude and unspoken love, the kind that doesn't demand words because it's already understood. And under the shimmering lights of that ballroom, surrounded by applause and quiet reverence, 3 lives, once connected by pain, now stood as living proof of what kindness can build when it's shared. The following week, Alicia sat alone in her apartment once more. The award now rested quietly on her bookshelf beside framed letters from fans, a photo of Oprah and Keanu smiling beside her, and the same hand-drawn sign that had started it all. The words, "You are enough," were slightly faded now, but she loved it that way. It reminded her that real things aren't supposed to stay perfect. She turned on her camera one last time, not for another viral post, not for fame, but to close the circle. The red recording light blinked as she looked into the lens and smiled softly. "I've spent a long time thinking about this," she began. "When all of this started, I thought I needed to change my body to be loved. I thought I had to earn worthiness by becoming someone else. But the truth is, I didn't need to change. I just needed to stop apologizing for existing." Her eyes glistened as she spoke. "I used to believe that kindness was something you had to deserve, that people only gave it to you when you were pretty enough, smart enough, thin enough, perfect enough. But then I met 2 people who showed me something different. Oprah showed me that compassion is power. And Keanu, he reminded me that empathy isn't weakness. It's courage in disguise." She paused, letting the words sink in. "If I could tell the world one thing, It would be this: stop waiting for permission to love yourself. You don't have to earn it. You already have it. Alicia reached for a small box on the table and held it up to the camera. Inside were dozens of "You Are Enough" bracelets, gifts from her foundation. "We've sent over 100,000 of these around the world," she said proudly. "Every one of them is a reminder to someone who's struggling that they matter, that they don't have to disappear to be accepted." She smiled, her tone lighter now. "Some days, I still have doubts. Some days, I forget. But now, I know that forgetting isn't failure. It's just part of being human. The trick is remembering to come back home to yourself." As she spoke, her voice softened into something that felt like both closure and renewal. Maybe the world doesn't need more perfection. Maybe it just needs more compassion. Maybe all we really need is to stop looking for what's wrong and start seeing what's right. The screen gently faded to a montage of moments. Alicia on stage at schools, students wearing their bracelets, Oprah smiling from the audience, and Keanu standing quietly backstage, hands folded, watching with quiet pride. The images moved slowly, bathed in soft light, like a memory playing in slow motion. Over the montage, Alicia's voice continued. "I used to think I was too much, too emotional, too big, too sensitive. Now I know that being too much just means you care deeply, and the world needs more of that." The montage continued, showing scenes of Alicia meeting students, embracing strangers, and laughing with volunteers at her foundation. The light around her seemed to glow warmer with each clip, less like fame, more like peace. Her voice carried softly through the images. "Kindness doesn't need an audience," she said. "It just needs intention. Every time you choose compassion instead of criticism, you make the world a little softer. Every time you remind someone they matter, you give them something to hold on to when life feels too heavy." A video clip played of her standing at a podium, speaking to a crowd. "If you've ever been told you're not enough," she said in that recording, "remember this: you already are. You always were. You just needed someone to say it out loud." Her voice in the present overlapped gently with the recording. "That's why I'll never stop saying it, because someone out there still needs to hear it for the first time." The montage faded to Keanu and Oprah sitting together at the award ceremony, clapping quietly as Alicia accepted her honor. The camera lingered on Keanu's calm expression, then on Oprah's warm smile. Alicia's narration softened, her words full of gratitude. "They showed me that one act of kindness can start a ripple that never ends. What began as a conversation became a movement, and that movement became a home for anyone who ever felt invisible." The final clips showed children holding signs that read, "You are enough," classrooms with murals of Alicia's quote, and people across the world wearing tend bracelets engraved with those same words. The imagery was powerful, but it was her voice that carried the message home. "To everyone watching this," she said, "if you've ever doubted your worth, remember this story. I'm not special. I'm just proof that a single act of empathy can change everything. So if you can, be that act for someone else." She paused, a faint smile forming. "Because when you remind someone of their worth, you remind yourself of yours." The final image returned to Alicia in her apartment. The soft evening light poured in through the window, catching the faded cardboard sign on the wall behind her. She looked into the camera one last time, her expression peaceful, eyes shining with quiet strength. "Thank you for being part of this journey," she said gently. "If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Share it to remind them they're enough, just as they are." Her voice dropped to a near whisper. "And if you've ever had someone remind you of your worth when you forgot it, tell me in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story." She smiled one last time before reaching forward to stop the camera. The screen faded to black, leaving her final words echoing softly in the background. Maybe the world doesn't need to be perfect. Maybe it just needs to be kind.